hitting in the static. This ain't no bedtime story, son, it's prophetic. Encrypted signals from the shadows of the garden. We dig where the dirt got secrets, no parting. Microphone alchemist, scriptures with a twist. Peep the frequency, seeds in the mist. We drop bars like plagues, revelations in the cadence. Broadcasting truth while they trapped in surveillance. Wisdom with a watchman's blade. Fourth watch style while your whole system fade. Blood moons, Nephilim, echoes in the pine. Sasquatch stomping through the fault lines of time. We ain't mainstream, we ancient stream. Cipher with the prophets, decode the dream. So if you tuned in, better guard your mind. It's broadcasting seeds and we breaking the design. Yeah. Straight from the broadcast studio. Hidden in the static.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Broadcasting Seeds. Our guest tonight, I've got Tahverlee. Is it Anglen? Good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like her to introduce herself, tell us who she is, what she does, and where we can find her.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, thank you, Bennett, for having me. And it's really great to be introduced with your deep voice. You have such a radio voice. I'm like,
Thank you.
that's delightful. Yes, my name is Tahverlee, and I'm a high priestess, a practicing witch, the founder of the Moon Temple Mystery School, author of a series of forthcoming books that will begin releasing next year. And also I'm a student of life. I do a lot of work in the spiritual realm, and yet I also consider myself to be a seeker of always learning new things, because I believe that the more we grow and the more we develop, the more we realize we don't know. And so, yes, I teach and talk about these topics a lot, and I also love the idea that the more I know, the more I don't know.
Yeah, I always say that on this show is the bottom line comes down to is we don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
We really does. And as soon as you start thinking you do,
Mm-hmm.
that's usually when you're showed, no, it's not. Nope.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
one of the things so you describe yourself as a priestess in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? And when did this, I guess, wildness, first awaken in you?
Yeah. And really great question. And I know you also asked me where people can find me. So before I answer
Oh,
that
yeah,
question,
sorry about that.
I'll add that in. You can pretty much type my first name into any social media platform and find me, because I have such a unique name. So if you just look for Tahverlee, you'll find me. Or you can go to moontempleschool.com or even tahverlee.com, which is my future author site. So there's
Awesome.
you can, there's lots of ways to find me.
I'll put everything in the show notes too.
Yeah,
so.
great. Thanks. And so your question about wildness, I mean, in the word priestess, it's a really fascinating thing to imagine how much of our lives we go through living in the box of what we're told that we should be, or what we're told will actually make us happy. Many of us weren't. I mean, I wasn't necessarily told who I should be growing up. Marketing tells us that, right? The collective tells us that. Schools tell you that. Books tell you that. But in my family, there wasn't some sort of dictated path on who I should become. But I was raised, like you, like many of us, with the idea of this particular path is what you should take to be happy, right? Like this will bring fulfillment. This, the right house, the right car, the right kids, the right job, right? The right university certificate. Like all of these things are the path you should take. And I did all of those things. And all the way along the path, I had this nagging question inside me, which was, is this all there is? Like, is this all there is? And I knew that question existed in me. And many of us know that question exists in us. And for me, the bigger part of what cracked that open is when I started experiencing a lot of difficulties in life. The marriage I thought I was supposed to have that would lead to this, some exalted state of perfection of, a successful woman and mother fell apart. And when that happened, I started really asking deeper questions. And then I actually continued on in that box. I said, okay, well, then you move on, right? You move on, you find another another way to relate to a human and create a life together, and that question never left. And it wasn't until, for me, going through some different health challenges, I've had 12 major surgeries, and if you could see this, you'll see like I have a lot of different tattoos, and there's a series of birds on my left shoulder that go around my shoulder blade, and they all represent a major surgery that I have survived. And there was one particular time when, the precariousness of my health, I was having a post-surgical complication. And there was a time that I thought, like it, this could be it. Like this really could be it. And I was okay. Because I had been through so much change and turmoil through the course of my life, just like everyone else, my challenges were big challenges for me, but we all have challenges.
Yeah.
And when I got to that place and I realized, wow, I've survived a lot. I've done a lot. I've been courageous. I've tried new things. I've raised my children who were teenagers at the time. Like, okay, if this is it, maybe I did do what I was meant to be here for. And I was really at peace with that. And then of course I had to have an additional surgery. The complications I had was following having a lump removed from my breast. And that became a full body infection that went into my lymph system. And when they went in to like do the like final surgery to clear that issue, and I woke up the next day, I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I didn't have a near death experience when I was under anesthetic during that time, but I was taken to the edge of what I call like a cliff.
Mhm.
And I can still today see it clear as day. Even though I was under general anesthetic, I could see what the cliff on the other side, let's say. So I didn't go there, but I saw it. And when I woke up the next day, that question of, is this all there is, just blew me open. Because to me, I realized, oh, if that would have been it and it wasn't, then every day matters, right? Then every day matters. And so then I actually really just started asking that question, is this all there is? And that led me down paths to exploring a lot about myself that had always been in my life. Like, I'm a seer. That's just how my own spiritual gifts work. And I started to explore, like, why me, and what does this mean? Because I knew these things were true about me, but I didn't necessarily have a place to talk about it. So I started talking about all these things that felt very mysterious to me. And I feel like what happens is when you seek answers to the unanswerable question, it's like the universe or God or the goddess like drops breadcrumbs to take you down a path to learn. So I'm still breadcrumbed.
Yeah.
I still get more information, and that led to me exploring the idea of sovereignty. And when I really started exploring sovereignty, then I started meeting other spiritual practitioners. I started meeting witches and oracles and shamans, and I started studying and training. And then I initiated into one path, and then I initiated into another path, and then I kept studying and I kept learning and I kept practicing. And I feel like I just keep finding deeper layers of this mystery of it all, which to me is the unanswerable question. And that's what I mean by priestess of the wild, is I'm willing to be wild in my beliefs. I'm willing to be wild like nature, because I know that everything is a cycle, and this is just a part of my cycle of my soul.
Yeah. Good answer.
It was long. I'm like,
Yeah.
that was a long
Yeah.
answer.
This is your interview. Like, it's for you
Thanks.
to talk, not for my audience to hear me. They want to hear you. So,
Thank you.
so another thing, I was looking, I did some research for this interview. And one of the things that I see is the word witch, which
Mhm.
still, it still sparks controversy, right?
Yeah.
And curiosity. So with that, what does that word mean to you? But I also want to know, what doesn't it mean?
Those are two very good questions. I find myself over the last couple of years in the large amount of interviews I've done, and I talk a lot on social media. I do a lot
Yeah.
of videos. That I would actually tell you that that definition, to me personally, changes daily because and so when I try to put it into a couple of sentences, it can become hard, but and I can't say that I speak for everybody, right? Like the definition of which is so different for everyone. But for me, most of the time, it means someone that understands that we have access to more than just the human world and we can utilize that energy to create change. And that to me is the most simplest form. I could
Mhm.
say, a witch is someone that casts spells. I could say a witch is someone who knows how to tap into the universal flow of energy that divines all things. I could say a witch is someone who understands divinity in everything. I could also say that not all witches are psychics, not all psychics are witches, not all witches cast spells, not all witches hex, like all these different areas on how it fits. And the only way I know how to describe it is with all things that involve any type of human, there is a spectrum about what that
Yeah,
looks
no.
like.
Yeah.
I do realize that one thing that is unique about me is that I bridge spirituality and witchcraft. I sit pretty strongly in the middle of the two. And I know that there are a lot in my own communities, there are a lot of practicing witches that don't really bring spirituality into it. I also have a lot of people that are walking a very powerful spiritual path in their life and they would never identify as a witch. And it's almost like these two questions come up as, from a spirituality perspective, how do you surrender and look for the signs, right? The breadcrumbs and follow divinity. Like how do you just be so aligned in your frequency that you are guided in your path? Like that's kind of, like the spiritual side. And the witchcraft side is, well, I desire a specific path. So I'm going to put things in place to guide it or co-create it,
Mhm.
and they kind of sometimes can sit in different sides of the pendulum, really. And I get asked this question all the time, like, do you teach spirituality or do you teach witchcraft? And I'm like, both, because to me, they're both. They're both just different avenues towards the same goal. It's whether or not you choose to be an active participant, which you already are through your beliefs, through your energy, you're already creating all the time. But whether or not you consciously want to change that, to me, is more the path of a witch.
Gotcha. So do you believe that it's something you're born with or something anyone can learn to embody?
I think anybody can learn to embody. I think it's just a label, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
also, I do think that it's a privilege in where I live to be able to identify as a practicing witch. In some parts of the world, humans will still be persecuted and killed for identifying with that title or doing anything that is deemed as witchcraft.
Yeah.
I think it's a privilege to identify as a witch. And for me, really, to reclaim that word meant I'm reclaiming sovereignty over my own path. That box I know that I've been striving for however many years of my life to fit into. I flipped my middle finger to that box when I reclaimed the word witch, and I know that it triggers a lot of people. But most of the time, if people ask me questions and we talk deeply about it, they're like, "Oh, well, that makes sense." Because,
Yeah.
it's, Hollywood and the persecution of really women has created that bad taste in our mouths. And kind of it should, in the sense that that word has been used to persecute women for a really long time.
A really long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
What inspired you to create Moon Temple Mystery School?
Mm,
And like in what kind of transformation do you see most often in your students? I guess that's two questions, but let's start with the first.
yeah. I
Because it's
remember
no small undertaking.
it's no small undertaking. I remember the moment that I decided that this was a path that I was going to lead. And it happened in combination with walking through other mystery schools and experiencing um, more mistreatment of people that weren't
Mm.
perfect, that didn't fit the perfect scenario of that mystery school's ideology of how somebody should practice that craft. Now, I believe that when you enter any type of initiate path specifically, that you're agreeing to learn it that way while you're in that path. And then what you do with it after is, up to you. But I do believe that when you choose, especially if there's, a commitment on your part, if you're committing to learn something specifically, you should go all in and learn it. And I still teach that way. And, the teachers I had also taught that way. But if that comes with this idea that you could be too in touch with your body, that you could be too quiet when it comes to sharing, that you could have some sort of, learning disability and learn differently, or some type of mental health issue that wouldn't allow you to fit that box, to me, that's the same dogma that we're trying to avoid. And unfortunately, I saw it. And I felt like the idea that someone's imperfection should be a gatekeeping exercise to the mysteries as I've learned them didn't sit well with me. So I wanted to open something where inclusivity was possible. That I do expect people, when it's only on, the initiate path, to come in prepared to learn and do it this way, and then take what resonates and leave the rest. And that anybody can walk. Like, you don't have to, you can walk the path. You don't have to have a lineage. You don't have to have a certain set of beliefs. If you have an open heart and this interests you, then you're welcome here. And I know that isn't how modern day mystery schools are run today. Maybe a few. I know a few. But there's still, this idea that it's only for the select few is dogma that I wasn't willing to participate in. And that's really what led me to opening the mystery school. And it was a serious undertaking. I had just launched my first business, so this was going to be my second business. And I did one of the largest ceremonial magic conductions that I've ever done just before I opened the mystery school. And it's called a headless rite. And I performed this ceremony to allow, and for people that don't know what that means, it's a ceremony where you're speaking a lot of different language words, you're invoking a lot of different elemental leaders, you're bringing in a lot of ancestors of the path, to support you, and physically you're putting your head below your heart. So, you're going through a type of spiritual death so something new can be born. And when I did that, I knew that I was willing to be held to a higher standard of my own values and my own beliefs in order to be a temple keeper for the mysteries and initiate others. And I accepted that. And so yeah, it was significant, and it was one of the most amazing things that I've ever chosen to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what's your view on, like, I guess I'll call it shadow work?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can people dive too deep, or is darkness just another teacher?
Well, darkness is definitely another teacher.
Yeah, obvious.
Yeah, I mean,
That's right.
100%.
But like, can
Yeah.
people dive too deep?
Let's look at that in two ways. I think a lot of people ask that question wondering, if you go too deep in the shadows, can you enter the demonic world? Like, that's
Yeah.
sometimes the way that's asked. So I'll set that aside and come back to that. If we just look at shadow work kind of as it's known in the mainstream way, it's really just exploring your traumas, your triggers, your
Right.
wounds, like, to heal. If you're on an ongoing journey to heal and it lasts 30 years and you never feel like you've healed enough to actually live life, then you've gone too deep. There's a place for shadow work, and I think it comes up a lot, right? We are re-triggered at new levels every time we grow. Myself included.
Yeah.
I can even give you an example of how I even bump up against my shadows that I healed years ago that kind of resurface in a new way, and that is in the publication of my forthcoming books. There's a new level of me, of vulnerability being explored when I am writing the books that I'm writing, because I share very personal stories in these books about magic. And it's called, the series is called Sacred Magic, and there's 4 of them by direction. So the first one is the North, the second, the East, the third, the South, and, the fourth, the West. And I share a lot of very personal, vulnerable parts of my path. And I definitely get triggered a little at the idea of how exposed I am, like the idea of being seen in this way, because, these little voices in my head, that's like, oh, that friend I had when I was a senior in high school, how are they going to feel about me sharing all these parts of me? They're
Right.
going to judge me. And, so that shadow that I have, the fear of being seen, which is part of my own witch wounding, it has resurfaced, and I feel like we clear shadows and they get re-triggered, and then, hopefully we learn the tools on how to actually address the shadows and heal them over and over again, not to stay in them. To me, the idea of doing shadow work is to heal, not to stay in the shadows. Like, we're meant to go into our shadows to become better humans, better in whatever belief system or practices we have, to be better, and then, set them aside until it resurfaces again, and hopefully learn how to heal yourself better as you go along. More tools, right? More tools in your
Yep.
toolbox.
Yep.
Now, the demonic side. So let's talk about that. I do think that there is a lot of misconceptions that when you are doing underworld or shadow work, or I consider myself a shadow walker, meaning I walk into the very dark places in people's lives very often alongside them, because I'm comfortable holding that space to help show them where the light can be found.
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel super uncomfortable with the idea of underworld or shadow world, and I will say that, like with all things that include humans, there's darkness in every area of our existence. The spiritual realm, the mental plane, the physical plane, darkness is here. We all have experienced darkness and in bad people, bad
Yeah.
spirits, and so can doing a lot of shadow work lead you to dark places that could open you up to demonic experiences? Maybe, because if you get too caught up in the shadows, you're allowing cracks in your energy field, and those cracks can allow dark energy inside of you.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your experience is with this, but I have moved a lot of entities out of humans, and those entities are not bad spirits that have entered the humans. They are dark balls of negative, unprocessed trauma, right?
Hmm.
And unprocessed pain that lives inside of somebody's body so much that it becomes its own sentient thing. So, yeah, that's a lot. I'll let
Yeah.
you
No, no,
add.
no. I was just, but this is exactly where I wanted this to go, because it's one of those things where people hear the term shadow work and they
Mhm,
think immediately, um, you know, demonic or
mhm,
something along those lines, where it's actually more like, everyone has a light side and a dark side. And
mhm.
so it's
And the
kind of
shadow,
the yin and yang, right?
yeah. And if you think of shadow work as just going into the parts of you that you
Hmm.
hide from the world,
Exactly.
or the parts of you that you don't even realize you still carry, right? Like, a lot of times, just even embarking on any type of shadow work, you realize that you hold so much subconsciously in your initial programming that it still just lives inside your body like an operating system, and you don't even know that it's there. And shadow work is beautiful in the way that it unearths these things that you don't even realize drives your day-to-day life. And when you heal those parts of you, or you even just bring a little light to it, right? I I don't know who originally said this, but I've seen it and heard it all over social media, and that's that you're not standing in the light if you don't have a shadow.
Mm. Yeah. True story.
Yeah.
So the difference, how do you think you can tell the difference between, like, intuition guiding us or trauma talking to us?
Mm. I really love the way you worded that, because that's not usually the way that I'm asked that question. Um, it's inside your body, right? And knowing how your body feels, like what is a yes in your body, what is a no in your body, what is a
Yeah.
trauma response in your body. You have to know yourself deeply enough to be able to discern between the lens of fear, pain, and trauma, and the lens of guidance. So, for example, um, in former parts of my life, I, have been a Krav Maga instructor. So I've spent a lot of years teaching self-defense, and I have interacted with a lot of people who have experienced violence. And once you have experienced something violent, you carry a foggy lens of fear, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
every time you walk around a corner or go down a dark alley at night, that something could recreate that situation. And one of the most powerful ways to learn self-defense is to have situational awareness. Like, we teach people to trust what you feel. When something feels off, trust that it is. But what happens if you have trauma around physical violence, and every corner you turn, creates that feeling of intuition that something bad is going to happen? And so that's an extreme case, but it's actually a really good study
Mhm.
of how intuition and, trauma kind of come together. In most cases, when you learn how to heal where that first issue came from and recognize that you will probably carry a skewed lens in that area, then it allows you to maybe add a second layer of verification in,
Yeah.
right? And that's I teach a lot of people to, because it's not usually in all areas of our life. So let's go back to that situation. If someone has experienced something physically violent and they carry a skewed lens around that intuitive hit when they're outside, they likely don't have that lens when it comes to what they should have for dinner, or what business project to go to, or what job they should take next. Like, that lens is probably a little more clear in another area of their life. When you know where your lens is a little foggy, it just requires a little more time to think it through, like a little more time to ask yourself, like, and I teach it with a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly to ask and really connect to your body and say, like, is this my intuition telling me this, or am I seeing it through the lens of something else? And if you learn to trust what that first thing that comes when you're listening to your body, then it usually leads you the right way. Even if your mind is saying, but, your body is going to say something different. And it's really just important to know how to listen to your body's yeses and your body's nos.
Yeah. Understand. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit.
Hmm.
So you've seen my podcast and what
Yes.
we talk about. So one of the things one of the things I always ask people is, do you have any, I guess you would call it, supernatural type experiences, or things where, like, you go out in the woods and you've seen or had an experience with a cryptid or something like that? Anything that pops into your head that
I have
they
so many.
okay, awesome. So
Okay,
yeah,
this will be
just
fun. Okay, so I'll tell you a couple of really great ones. And I'll start with some small ones. So I sat on a deck a couple of years ago on the island that I live on now. Before I had lived here, I was just visiting, and I was asking this question of what it would be like to live here, right? Because I live on a tiny little island out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And I was asking this question. It was the middle of the day, the sun is shining, I had a bikini top on, and I'm enjoying this, like, beautiful backyard. And I noticed movement to the right. And I looked over to this field of gnarled oak trees and tall grasses, and there was a pond near there, and a group of energetic beings that almost seemed to be outlined in white, like
mhm,
chalk maybe, um, walked through, and they were physically moving without moving, as spiritual beings do. They moved across the fields and stopped right in front of me. And I proceeded to spend probably about 10 minutes communicating with these spirits. And some of them were super short. It was quite interesting to me. And
hmm,
I'm used to communicating with spirits regularly. It's a normal part of my practice, but I don't necessarily see them physically appear. But
right.
I'm really open-minded to periods of time when the veil is lowered. So I don't get a fear trigger, which I think sometimes stops a lot of people from
Oh yeah,
experiencing that, right? So I allowed it to happen, and I asked some questions and I received some information. And, they, in the way that spirits do, they kind of telepathically give you information
right.
while you're seeing this, like, holographic thing in front of you. And
Yeah,
I
it's
I
so
know
bizarre. Yeah,
I know, it's so bizarre, and yet I can tell you, in my line of work, this happens to people all the time. They just don't have a place to talk about it. This is a normal thing, and I think that there was a Gallup study done during the COVID years that asked how many people have experienced some type of spirit communication in their life, and it's like 75%.
It's a
So
lot.
it's a lot. So I know that we think it's weird to talk about it, but really people are like, oh yeah, I've experienced that, something like that.
Yeah.
But they communicated to me. They gave me information for like 10 minutes. They said, this is what you should expect. This is what we want. This is what you do. And phew, they were gone. I thought, okay, that was quite interesting. And again, just a normal walk in the life for me. So that was a super one that I like. And I was just recently thinking about that because I now live on these lands where that happened. I can share some really great stories too. There's a spiritual coaching client that I have that I work with regularly. And I remember one of our very first sessions, we were on Zoom, kind of, on a screen like you and I are.
Yeah.
And behind her, while she's on the screen, I slowly watched her door shut.
Open. Oh,
Like shut, go from open. And I watched it and I could see her watching it in the screen, and we both paused and we just watched the door close. And I said to her, you have a visitor. And she's like, oh yeah, that spirit's here all the time. That happens. And these are the stories that I love, where regular spirit interaction becomes normal.
Yeah.
Now, some of the wilder ones, I have witnessed a particular type of spirit enter into a human's body and change the body's complete composition, including voice, cadence. And by the way, this human opened for it. Like this was chosen because we are always in control, right? So this was a chosen thing. And it was really interesting because what happened when that spirit left that human body is that human had such a wake up to what is possible just from that one shifted experience. Now, she didn't do that again. It wasn't her preference. Like it was discombobulating for her. But what happened is her spiritual gifts, like that dial got turned up so loud to where she literally could start to see the crystalline grid on the planet. She saw color, like energy appear in colors. So I thought that was a super, and these are all wins, right? I'm sharing you stories that were wins, or let's just say positive experiences. Yeah, that's amazing. Kind of cryptic, the more interesting side of things. I'll tell you a really great story about me if you would like. And this isn't cryptic, but it is pretty wild.
Yeah.
The very first headless rite that I did, I told you about the one I did for mystery school. That was my second. The first time I did that ceremony, I had rented these houses that are called earth ships in New Mexico, like half buried in the earth. And then one side is like all windows. So I knew I was going to do this big ritual. It's the first time I had done something like this. I was going to do it by myself. I rented this house, and it's a longer story how I got to that. That part's not for today, but I knew this was going to happen. It was months in the planning. I get there, the day of the ritual, I did a ritual cleanse, and I had on this little sheer kind of robe after, because it's like, 13 acres of private land. And I go outside to light the fire for, preparation of the ritual. And both of the doors slammed shut and locked. So I'm basically naked outside. And there's nothing. And earth ships are this big, thick glass, right? Because they're like solar powered. So
you're not like shimmying a window open.
No, and I tried to break a window. I tried to put a rock through the window. I tried to push a barbecue. I was willing to pay for anything to get back into the house. And my truck was unlocked, but there was nothing in it that I could use. But what I did find was my combat boots were left there because it was muddy when I was unloading my truck. So my combat boots were outside. So I strapped on knee-high combat boots, pretty much naked, and had to go on a quest to get help.
Oh, no.
And many, 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 many minutes and miles of walking later, I found myself on this dirt road. The sun had gone down by now. I'm having multiple panic attacks. Like I had already opened ritual space, right? Like I was already in an altered state. And so I kept just thinking like, well, why is it like, how am I not meant to do this ritual? Like, is this a no sign? Like what is happening? And I'm nervous and I'm sweaty and I'm naked and I have combat boots on, and I'm walking down this dirt road trying to get to another house because I'd already gone to a few and there were no people there. And I I'm walking on this dirt road and I hear this noise behind me. And I'm like, oh, holy goddess, it's a vehicle. And I felt a mixture of relief that I'm going to be helped and a mixture of nervousness because holy gadzooks, I'm like not clothed, I'm looking wild,
Looking
late
a
at
little
night.
crazy.
And sure enough, it was this young man pulled up in a construction truck next to me where I turned my head and his window was rolled down and his mouth was like dropped wide open. And he's like, doesn't say a word. And I'm like, can you help me? I've locked myself out of a house. And I had the nervous babble. I nervous babbled a lot. Well, he helped me. I ended up having to get in his truck and go for a drive because there was no cell phone signal. And we got help and this whole story happens. Okay. And I mean, I've literally died 1,000 times in this of embarrassment by the time I got back into the house. And his name was Gunner. And somewhere in my, hour of nervous babbling trying to get me back into the house, I must have somewhere along the lines mentioned that I had rum because he kept asking, like, what are you doing outside of the house like that? Like what's happening? And I'm private in my practices and situations like that. But when he went to let me back in the house, we had to go, he was able to dig into the ground, found where a spare key would, dug into the ground, found the key, let me in the back door. Well, what he sees through the window is this stainless steel table surrounded by candles looking like there's going to be some sort of serious sacrifice happening. But really,
was like an episode of Dexter.
Yeah, I'm sure. But that table was actually where I was going to paint after, I'm an artist. So I paint after, but it didn't look like that. So I sent him on his way. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, I hear this knock, knock, knock on the door. And Gunner had returned and said, so you have rum? And I'm like, oh gosh, okay. So here I am trying to decide, am I going to complete this ritual or am I going to be tempted by this? And by the way, did I mention I was single at the time and he was super hot, super hot. So, I mean, he's already seen all my body parts by then. And I really had to like sit with it for a minute and I decided to complete the ritual. And I realized somewhere along the way that whole quest, that whole journey was part of the ritual. Like it was all orchestrated as part of the ritual. Cause the headless rite is to die so you can be reborn. Well, I literally died 1,000 times of embarrassment. Like I, probably sweat 10 pounds of nervousness off me in that. So, okay. So this is enough of a wild story, right? Like this is crazy. Well, several months later, I was writing my first book, which I haven't published. It is I was writing my memoir and I could feel this every time I would write, every time I was in a writing period, like this gigantic red-winged bird was hovering over me. And I almost would look up like to my ceiling to see if there was something there because I could feel this presence. And it kind of changed and it looked like an animal face and then it kind of looked like a bird and then it was black and then it was red and it was definitely a darker energy. And I worked hard trying to communicate with it to understand like what this is. And because it was only happening while I was writing, I didn't know. I just, sometimes we just don't always know. And sometimes it takes time to figure things out.
Yeah.
So I booked a reading with a man in Colorado who is really comfortable doing readings with darker energies. And I explained to him what I was writing. I explained to him about this thing that's been hovering nearby and we do a little bit of shamanic work together. And he stops and he says, okay, I got it. You have a spirit guide that is a bear sark. And I say, well, what's a bear sark? And he goes into the mythology of Odin, right? And Odin's army that, men would turn into bear sarks before battle, in order to be unkillable, which is where the word berserk comes from.
Yeah.
And they just become shapeshifters and they're super powerful. And the only way for them to shapeshift from a bear sark back to a human is to throw hot coals at them or the side of a naked woman. And I already started to get like real tingly, like when he said that. And my voice goes like 10 notches higher. And I say, does my bear sark guide have a name? And he said, yeah, his name is Gunnar.
Gunnar.
If you've ever seen like a witch melt, like in shock, and I do a lot of shocking things. So for me to be so shocked, like my head hits the desk, I start to cry. I'm laughing and I'm crying. And I finally tell him the story of what had occurred months before, which I didn't know. They were so far apart in my own life. I didn't put the two and two together. And he said, oh yeah, your guide, Gunnar, at the sight of you naked, picked you up on the side of the road. And he said to me, did you ever talk to him after? And I said, no, he gave me his number, but that was a pretty wild thing. He's like,
Right.
let's call it. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. Here I am, like right back in my 1,000 deaths of nervousness. And I pull out my phone while we're right there and I call his number. And of course it's not in service. So it was this wild, wild experience. And yeah, it was. And there's so many things that had to happen inside of me.
Yeah.
And my comfort to be uncomfortable in the spiritual realm for that to happen. That's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah. Wild. I do write about it in my book. So, if anyone ever buys my book, you're going to see my shock at it. And the person who did the reading for me when he saw the whole experience, he had this like deep, I want to call it like a Santa Claus or like a like a Norse, he's like a Norse god laugh. So his laughter, I think it reverberated through lifetimes when he heard the story. And he kind of did a bow to Gunnar and said, well done in taking care of your woman. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about any of this.
That's really funny.
It's wild.
It definitely is. Do you, kind of with that being said, do you believe that, I guess in this time that we're in now, right? A heightened spiritual conflict? Or is that more of a perception that's part of an awakening process itself?
Okay, let me switch kind of energies to talk about that. I mean, yes, I do. I think spiritual warfare is happening right now at a very serious scale. And I believe that the more that we do work on ourselves to keep our frequency at a certain level in openness and exploration and connection to divinity, and I feel like one awakened human squashes, like 300 of the darker side of spirituality that is kind of seeping in. Yes, I actually know it to be true. I know spiritual warfare is true, right? I know it's real right now, and I'm thinking about how deep we can go into the discussion, but this spiritual warfare that's happening right now is for our consciousness.
Okay, makes
right?
sense.
It's to take away, sovereignty and freedom, which requires you to have a level of consciousness about yourself and the world at large, because you are only truly free when you realize it's only you that's going to be able to rescue you and understand the cycle of your soul and connect it to nature. I mean, true freedom comes when you strip away all the material, things and addictions and, distractions.
Yep.
I mean, that part over there is true freedom, and everything is working against humans living in that space right now. And with that comes a lot of darkness is being fired at people, and they're swallowing it without realizing they're swallowing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. No,
tell me what you think about that, because you talk to a lot of people.
I do. I would agree. There's definitely a spiritual warfare of some sort going on. Whether it's, and it's obviously light and dark. I mean, that's how, I describe it, at least. Right. And there absolutely is. And it's definitely a war for the mind, for the consciousness, or, and this is why I talk about folks, and I don't really talk about it on my episodes much, but there's so many people that are just silent, even inside. They're just, I don't like to say dead inside. They're just like non-player characters. They're NPCs.
Yes.
I know we hear this phrase all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, I look at it as a way that they're being bombarded, like you had said, with all of this just to keep them in their shell,
quiet,
to keep them down and quiet. So I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, actually. And then you have other folks that are awake. And I guess, I don't want to get into the verbiage with that, but, there's people that are present and actually in the fight. And then there's people that I think have already shut down to the fight. right?
Mhm.
And our job is to wake those people up.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I view it.
100%
Try the
agree.
reason that my podcast, it's
Yeah.
called Broadcasting Seeds, because that's what I'm
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
I'm throwing seeds, broadcasting them to the world, right? So just trying to wake one person up, one person at a time.
Yeah.
So that's my,
I agree. And thank you for sharing that. I knew you felt that way in it, but I wanted you to verbalize it here because
yeah,
I do think that um in most instances, non-player characters are probably not listening to this show, but their friend might be,
their
their
friend might be,
their partner might be, their neighbor
right?
might be, and then that conversation can happen. And I do see it is possible to be so awake that energy itself impacts other people without you having to even have the words. Like I
Yes.
do believe that energy of awakeness, it just impacts how you live,
Hmm.
that does create influence. And there's lots of ways. I mean, you're doing it, I'm doing it. I think that we're all here to play different roles too, right? Like non-player characters are filling a role.
Not really.
I mean, we're all here to play certain roles, and I tell people that non-player characters wake up when it's time to wake up.
True.
And everybody's version of what awake looks like is so divided right now. And the trap that you see everyone falling in is that if you don't wake up this way, you're now part of the wrong side of the war. And if you don't wake up this way, you sit on that side of the line. When the truth is there are 1,000 paths to divinity. So how do we look at that in a bigger scope? It's hard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do, I sit on something called the Wisdom Keepers Council, and it's a whole bunch of indigenous leaders and spiritual leaders all over the world. And, some of the work that this group has done together has, written books that get commissioned by the United Nations. Like it's a group of very wise people. And I consider myself to still be very much a learner in these meetings, like somebody learning, although we all share equally. Um, I do think that there is positive hope that the breaking down we see now is part of what's going to be rebuilt with higher levels of consciousness attached. And
Yeah.
part of
Right.
that is because the children that are born now, they're coming in, like their souls are coming into human bodies a little more awake than
Yeah.
we've
They're
ever
coming
seen.
in a little hotter
They're coming
than,
in a little hotter.
yeah.
And
Yeah. They are.
I think that maybe what we see in the breakdown in this warfare time over our consciousness is necessary. And I try not to think of it in the way that it's creating greater division. It probably is. And hopefully that it doesn't remain that way. Yeah.
And I guess I like to think of it as there's, you know, you ever see I kind of look at it as like armies of light and armies of dark.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a clear division. There's always some folks operating in the gray, and I don't mean just folks, but things as well,
Mhm.
operating in the gray. But at some point, I think everything's going to have to choose a side. Um, and that's what I kind of feel coming.
Now tell me
It
about the armies of dark, because I do think about this a lot. Like how if you were to meet somebody sitting at a bar or a coffee shop and you had this conversation and you said armies of dark and they said, well, how do I know to avoid that? What would you tell them to look for?
right. Um, you know what? That's a great question that I don't have a great answer for right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, me
Um,
neither.
and I think I really have to go off. Well, and the word that I use is discernment. And I listen
Mhm.
to my gut and I listen to my head, and I'll sit with it and I'll ask sometimes too, with things like this. Now, on that side of it all, my show or my audience knows this, but I have also had I didn't have a near death experience. I did and I wasn't conscious. I drowned.
Okay.
And I don't remember anything. I didn't like walk up and, towards a light, or I didn't have any of these things happen to me. But on the other side of it, I woke up and realized that now something was different about my vision. and I could see people's like auras, or I could see light around them. And that light was different colors sometimes. And trying to learn what that meant, sometimes people are dark, and that's a telltale sign. So I kind of have I look at it as a superpower.
It is, yeah.
But I have to see them directly. I can't even like have to take my glasses off, that kind of thing. I can't see them through a screen. It's got to be in person, right? So, truly, I'd say dark characters are dark, literally, to my eyes. I've even had some things that have no aura, so that makes it even spookier, scarier to me. So yeah.
It's like dark souls, soulless.
Yeah, or maybe there's something attached to them that shouldn't be, whether that's possession or oppression or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's something manipulating.
So you're a seer.
I guess you could say that.
Yeah. I think that you probably just answered that question, which
Yeah.
is, in order to discern what's part of kind of the dark forces, you have to know how your body receives information, because there's a lot of ways, right? And there also, if we go back to just intuition like that, there's a feeling.
Oh yeah, and I think most people have that ability.
But the thing is we are conditioned to be more polite than we are to step away from the dark. I can tell you lots of situations as a woman, and any woman that has lived for a number of years, we get exposed to a lot of things that are uncomfortable to us most of our lives, but we're taught to be polite.
Absolutely.
Like, we're taught to be polite and not to be rude. And when you feel something dark or something weird, it requires you to step away and just say, no, thank you. And that takes courage. So having it's not just knowing when something is dark, especially if it's a group of individuals or a human that's going to have impact on your life, because that darkness can leak in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm the father of 4 daughters.
Oh,
so.
my. So we could talk for a long time about this.
Something's teaching me a lesson.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, working with as many women as I have doing self-defense, that we need to teach our children to not worry about being polite as much as we do to worry about listening to what your body tells you. If something doesn't feel good in any situation, you just get the F out of there, period.
Yeah.
Location, relationship, person, friendship, classroom, job, like building, anything. And that to me that's a skill, right? To learn to listen to yourself, and we need to give permission to it. And I feel like that's part of why I do what I do. So it's like we just came to the crux of why it matters so much for me to do the work I do, to help people find what their spiritual gifts are, to turn them on. Whether or not you practice witchcraft doesn't matter to me, but being so sovereign and in touch with yourself and your body, it's the way forward.
Yeah, agreed. So this podcast is called Broadcasting Seeds.
Yeah.
So, plant a seed. This is one of the things I ask everybody to do is go ahead and plant something that you think is very important and broadcast that to the audience.
I know what it is. And I thought about this before we connected today, and that's detox from the addiction to your phone.
Huge.
Most importantly, detox from it. I teach it in all my books and in all my classes. I don't think that people even realize how addicted they are to their devices. In fact, youth today have created a term to go for a walk without your phone and headphones, or to go do something without your phone, is called going naked now. And I'm seriously, I mean, people they get twitchy. Like if you don't have your phone with you for 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon, people are like they're like, you could see it. Their bodies are like going through like withdrawals. It's
wild.
It's the way that you are most controlled right now. And so it's really important. And I'll give steps to practice it. So start spending, a couple of hours a day with your notifications silenced. Start there. Do that for, maybe you pick a period of time of 1 hour a day where your notifications are silenced. The second week, when your notifications are silenced, put your phone in the other room. So the habit of grabbing it stops. Right. So week 2, that 1 hour of time with notifications off, put your phone in the other room and just witness how many times do you reach for your phone. Right. And all the
I
scenarios.
feel it just like, oh.
Right. At work and at home or when you're grocery shopping. And then from there, start practicing leaving your phone behind whenever you can. Walks through the grocery store, go back to making a handwritten list if you need to.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like go for a walk without your phone, start practicing. And eventually the way in my book, I go through, there's a whole ritual for this because you are going to realize you have an addiction. But the goal is to lead up to 1 full day every month without your phone, full day, morning, noon, and night. And you have to work into it. Just like you would detox from a drug, you have to move slowly and practice it. Like I have rules in my house that no notifications on in my home ever. So when my children come, when guests come, I live in a place where people like to visit. So I have a lot of, I host a lot and I have retreats and there's no notifications in my house. Like my house doesn't ding, alert or bing
There's
ever.
No beeping, buzzing.
No. And it doesn't mean we don't all check our phones a lot. It's just we're not alerted to. Like take control back of your attention. Take control back of your ability to go deep in your mind and deep in your body. Because I promise you that if your inclination when you have 5 spare minutes while you're cooking chicken on the stove, if your inclination is going to the stove, you have going to your phone, you have missed that 5 minutes of connection to your body, to your wisdom, to your spiritual gifts. And so that's the seed I'm going to give. And I could talk about it all day long, but it's by far the most popular podcast I've ever recorded is how I went like a notification-free life, how I built a notification-free life. And that's the seed is
I like it.
Detox from the addiction to your phone.
So what's really cool is one of the things that they've started doing in schools around the nation is they have to lock up their phones during school. So that was one thing that happened in our entire school district where we live. And my wife works at the school. Now, what she's explained to me, and I've seen, because I still have a daughter that goes to that school as well, there's like fighting is down. There's just like all these behaviors that have been like rampant for a long time are all on the down because they don't have it's wild. And even if they're on their phone the rest of the day,
because they're going
they
to
have
be
to go they have to go 6-7 hours with no phone.
Beautiful.
And
I love it
like,
so much.
It's even the energy around the campus is different. It's so amazing. So
I will preach it as long as I am alive here in this lifetime, and maybe from the afterworld even. Maybe when I'm back to spirit form and I'm visiting all my people, I'm gonna like drop I'm gonna push their phones into like water glasses, like I'm gonna hold this tight.
So tell the audience again where we can find you.
Yes. moontempleschool.com is my mystery school site. And I have lots of different classes, whether it's developing your spiritual gifts or wanting to learn more about how to, bring a witchcraft practice into your life, or even how to walk a spiritual path. That's where that can be found. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all the places. Just search my first name. And there's unfortunately a lot of fake accounts in my name. So just make sure you're looking for the first one. I know it's Tahverlee. And then my forthcoming book series comes out in the middle of July next year. And so you can go to tahverlee.com and sign up for the waitlist.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Saw wind on my face, sunrise paints the tide. Old dunes hold the secrets time forgot to hide. Footprints fade quick, waves wash them clean. Still the spirit in the shoreline knows what we've seen. There's a hush in the breeze, like it's calling your name. Whispers of the moonlight never speak the same. So let the water roll, let the night be kind, let the stars draw a path. come slow, but they still come. Don't take a breath, take it in. Let the moment unwind. There's a tempo in the tide